The earliest followers of Jesus are making an astonishing claim. Wherever they go, they are astounding people with the news that Jesus Christ is raised from the dead. Yes, indeed, the resurrection of Jesus was something that actually happened. Now, many in Israel believed in an eventual general resurrection of the dead, in which those who died in Israel, particularly those Jews who had suffered an unjust death at the hands of Gentiles, would be raised in a grand act of God that would set right so much of the wrong that Israel had suffered. But no one believed in the resurrection of an individual. Yet that was exactly the early church's claim from the very beginning. God raised Jesus, who was unjustly crucified, from the dead. What's even more astounding is that the early church began living into the truth of the resurrection, and as they did so, they were able to proclaim with conviction that not only Jesus was resurrected, but they shall be raised too. This is huge. The early Christians asserted that resurrection was the remarkable sign of the beginning of a new age, in which resurrection had disrupted and changed everything. Now that Jesus has been raised, not only shall we be raised, but in a deep and life-changing sense, we are being raised. And to say that we are being raised is not simply a statement that has relevance when we die. It is an act of faith here and now. The resurrection is a sign that the world is being reclaimed, that the forces of death in the world are being defeated among us. To shout and to live before the world the truth, He is risen, is to make a claim about the reality that Jesus Christ is raised from the dead. Essentially, the church is saying, you know, the resurrection that occurred in the raising of Jesus Christ, well, it continues. Easter is not just something that happened to crucify Jesus. Resurrection is a power that's let loose among Jesus' followers. And that brings us to Joppa, where there was a woman whose name was Tabitha. Interestingly, Tabitha is called a disciple. One of the few women so explicitly designated. And Tabitha is a very good disciple because we read she was devoted to good works and acts of charity. But all that good work ends when Tabitha becomes sick and dies. The many poor widows whom Tabitha helped with her good deeds and charity stand by her body mourning. They pitifully hold up the garments that she has made for them. And Peter, the premier disciple, arrives at the side of the body. He kneels and prays, and speaking to the dead woman, Tabitha, get up. And in saying, get up, Peter uses much the same word that is used to speak of Jesus' resurrection. And Tabitha rises, restored to life. Of course, this is not the only resurrection that Tabitha will experience. Just like Lazarus, she will eventually die and be buried and rise again with all the faithful. Yet after Easter, it's impossible to hear a tale like this without thinking of resurrection. Jesus was resurrected. And after his resurrection, a good woman, through the resurrection power working through Peter, is raised, is brought back to life. Now, I'll admit it's a strange story. But maybe that's part of the writer's point in telling it. After Easter, after dead Jesus is raised, you had better become accustomed to some strange stories. The world after Easter is not like the world before Easter. Before Easter, everyone who lived died, and they stayed dead. Before Easter, poor people are totally at the mercy of external forces over which they have no control. Before Easter, there is much grieving as we bid farewell to those dear ones who depart us in death. But after Easter, after God's great defeat of death and the raising of Jesus, then death does not have the last word. After Easter, those who are vulnerable have hope because there is a power for good that is let loose into the world that is greater than the powers of evil. After Easter, we have hope that the future is not totally held by the past. This is one reason why we refer to the message of what happened in Jesus Christ as gospel, as good news. It is particularly good news because what happened in Jesus Christ, in his resurrection, still happens. Here, now. Easter is a promise that not only death does not have the last word, but also that God will not be defeated by evil and death. And those disciples who do God's good work in Christ's name will not be defeated. Yes, certainly there will be setbacks, there will be sickness, even death and mourning. But all those seemingly all-powerful forces have received a great blow. Death, once seen as the great defeater, has now been defeated. And so we have reason for hope. And I have sure found that to be true. Here in Christ's church, a body of believers commissioned by Jesus Christ to be his people in the world. Here in the church with a gigantic, seemingly impossible mandate to show Christ and his kingdom in all that we do and say to an unbelieving world. And so, to be in the church, to be a disciple like Tabitha or Peter, is to experience lots of disappointments, lots of defeats. Our church, as faithful as it is, continues, like any other church of any time, to fall short of Christ's mandate to us. But that's not the last word. We still have hope. Tabitha's fledgling little congregation, a tiny fringe group on the edge of the mighty Roman Empire, was up against greater odds than our church. Yet they took heart. They had hope because they heard this story. And they believed it to be a true account of what God was really up to in the world. In John Masefield's book of many years ago, The Trial of Jesus, the character of Longinus was patterned after the centurion in command of the soldiers at the foot of the cross. And in Masefield's novel, Longinus returns with his troops from Calvary on Friday. And that evening he was summoned by Pontius Pilate to give his daily report. And when he finished, Pilate's wife begged him to tell her more about the crucifixion and how the prisoner had died. And after Longinus told her, she said, "Longinus, do you think he is dead now? Is he dead and gone?" "No, ma'am," he replied. "Then where is he?" she asked. "Let loose in the world, where neither Roman nor Jew will ever stop his truth," he said. Let loose in the world, where nothing, absolutely nothing, can stop his truth. That's the truth of the resurrection. It is our truth. It is our hope in life, in death, and in life beyond death. Jesus Christ has been let loose in the world. And anything can happen now. Glory be to God.